The girl, who was called Laren, seemed to consider herself the main character of the novel. Her golden hair and green eyes seemed to illuminate the whole world where it appeared. Every morning, the whole servant greeted her welcome and immediately followed all her instructions, as they considered her an angel who came down from heaven. All of her was considered a common favorite and constantly surrounded her. When she saw her sister Siena, she always smiled and tried to tell how she was waiting for her. The siren was very different from the Lauren, though she considered her sister a whole world for her and hoped that she loved her. All this happened until Siena saw the true face of her Laura. The girl hated her very much but hid. But later she was able to sharpen Siena for playing, as she knew that she could have been grabbed for all her affairs. Lauren just mocked her sister and hoped that now no one would be able to save her. Many also hated Siena, and it was also her sister. Everyone believed that the older sister collected the best qualities in the younger. She even emphasized that she could kill Siena with her own hands and then just rejoice. But Siena decided to drink a charming potion and not to give her sister to just kill her. Lauren immediately became evil, because she did not expect that Siena would choose for herself such a pathetic death. But this did not mean that she was dying. The girl had big plans for which her sister did not even know. Siena knew that in that life no one loved her, which is why she decided to meet her end, but everything turned out to be different. When she woke up, she realized that she returned to the past, and now it was possible to start everything from the beginning. But she thought it was a solid problem for her, and she did not understand at all what to start her now. Meanwhile, there were major problems in the Empire, and the man addressed the magicians who were to help. As soon as everyone received instructions from the director, they now expected the Duke, who had to appear in their empire. From the very first existence, the Empire began to fight the demons. Even orphans began to protect it if they were able to use magic. In fact, the girls were not at all native to each other. They both served for the Knot family. It was the Knot family who provided the girls and was one of the shields of the entire empire. The siren was not considered good enough and constantly compared to the lore. But although she was a common people, she had a fairly good heart and a good character as opposed to her sister. Then she even remembered how the situation was not pleasant and she fell before the Duke. But nothing was wrong and it was not even cooked for it, and the Duke decided that he was taking her to his family. Since she was a child, she did not yet understand all the words she heard from her husband. But she decided that he had to behave very quietly so as not to fall into the Duke's eyes. Duke of Roderick Knot, who was the head of their family, visited the orphanage that day. All the children just lined up in front of him and kept a continuous silence, and some hoped that he would choose it. But he stopped at the girl who did not want to go with him at all. It seemed to her that it was just a coincidence. He sat down at her immediately and was ready to take her with him, but politely asked or was not mind. When a little girl looked at him, she realized that she was running away from her body, and strong magic was felt. Even when the war was over, but evil remained and all people tried to fight it. Little magicians in the Empire began to play an important role because they had to protect the Empire in difficult times. Parents from childhood have tried to teach their children magic because of this, the future there was a great opportunity to get into the higher world. Therefore, the guardian of Siena and Lorraine was considered an influential person who was part of the highest class. He did not look out of a little girl and tried to find out how her name was, but she realized that she did not want to talk to him at all. The tears overwhelmed her eyes, but she was a little ashamed, so she could not dare to say something. As soon as he stood on her knee, only then did the girl say her name. In fact, she could not understand why he chose it, and now began to call her by name. She did not want to go with him. Siena considered the place where he wanted to bring her to a real cemetery. From all those thoughts, her head crashed and she immediately began to cry on her knees. The man was a little squeezed and immediately began to offer her help, and also extended her hand to her. She realized that it was necessary to give up, but she could not open her mouth. From all those excitement, the girl simply could no longer withstand and lost consciousness. As soon as she started to open her eyes, she realized that she had only his face, but she didn't know why the Duke took care of her. Subsequently, she came to meet Laren, which at first glance looked very nice. As soon as they met, they began to consider each other sisters from that moment. Siena seemed to go normally, and they even promised one that would always be considered one family. The girl went to the Siena room every time without even warning it, and also brought various sweets. Laren even invited Siena to go to her parents' estate in summer, which was very surprised by the girl. After all, the siren did not know that she had her parents. Subsequently, it happened. They both visited the Laren family, where their parents were very pleased that at least someone was friends with their daughter. All the time the girls were together, they played, exchanged dolls, lunch, but for some reason it did not please Siena at all. Although it seemed to the girl that all in family treated her very well. One evening, Lorraine went to her sister and suggested that you do something at bedtime. There was a huge book in her hands. When she looked at her, she noticed that the book was strange and at first glance even old. Lorraine could no longer stand and began to read how it was necessary to share magical power with other people around. And since she believed that Siena did not possess magic, she decided to share with her. But from the very beginning, the girl was convinced that she had magical power and therefore decided that the Duke had chosen her. Laren assured that she had a lot of magical power, so she wanted to share, but it was considered a deception. But not to go back to the shelter, the girl had to agree with her sister. In those days, Laren belonged to Siena, as no one in her life did it, so she wanted to be near her that she would not cost her. Therefore, the girls were able to perform a ritual and promised each other, which would be their secret. But trusting someone or relying on someone was a bad idea, but Siena had not yet understood it. And when she understood everything, she wanted to go back to the past, to never face the Lauren again. Therefore, when she decided that she would return to her peaceful life where there would be neither the Duke nor her pathetic sister, Lorraine. Meanwhile, the Duke's security tried to bring out a man who constantly emphasized that he was definitely not guilty. By the time Siena had not woke up yet, everyone was embarrassed that the girl was in such a serious condition. The woman knew that the little was an orphan, but she didn't understand why she was so thin. Perhaps it was all that she did not eat. The asylum director knew that such special children needed special care and large sums were stood out. The Duke understood that not all children had magical abilities, so they were a military resource for the entire empire. And so he could not allow such children to be harmful or somehow operate them. It was because of this that the director did. It was decided that he could not be in that position. The man had to repent until he expected his punishment. The Duke did not listen to all the justification of the director and ordered him to be imprisoned. But the man believed that the orphan shelter was his property, so he was sure that the Duke could not do it with him. The Duke understood that the child was very bad because of those abuse and tried to do everything to stop it. He noticed that the baby looked at him very coldly, and it seemed to everyone that the girl thought it was her fault because she had fainted. As soon as Siena came to her senses, she was frightened that because he was now not ready to pick her up to himself. The girl asked not to give her, because she knew that she was waiting in the future. Therefore, she even promised that she would eat less to stay in the shelter. The woman tried to explain to the Duke that the girl's behavior was exactly the same because she was afraid to go because she was loved there. But no one managed to reassure her. She tried to pretend that she was crying, but in reality it was not. The assistant tried to emphasize that if the woman would also ask, then it would be even more difficult for the girl to calm down. They understood that the Duke would still be able to pick up the baby even against her will, but it was necessary to lie until it would not. Gradually, Siena began to come to her senses, but her fear still did not get anywhere. The Duke was already bored in the situation, and he ordered everyone to gather and return to the estate. At that moment, the girl hoped that she did not need to go with the Duke, and the woman emphasized that everything was well. Teacher Lisa reported that the Duke had left, and the girl, although she realized that she staged the stage, but the woman still looked at her with warmth. Then Siena realized again that all the good words that heard from her sister and her attitude, it was simply her treacherous plan. Before that, the Lauren hated Siena from the very beginning and came up with a plan how to kill her. Then Siena wanted to know the truth. Who really received those magical abilities in the estate when they were still small? Laren immediately laughed in her face and reported that she always considered her a trusting fool. In fact, it was Laren who abducted all the magical abilities of her sister, and Siena spent all her life in fake love. Therefore, the girl was very grateful that the teacher was on her side and was near her. Siena immediately understood that in her past life she remained with Miss Liza, then her whole life could have become much better. But the woman knew that she had to release the child to the Duke, and then she had no other way out at all than just to curse her. Their peace was broken by a director who broke into the room and wanted to pick it up. He shouted simply, not his cry, because he could not let that he had left in the shelter. Throwing her for her braids, the man began to pull her hard to give the Duke. Lisa tried his best to keep her husband, but he did not listen to her, but simply pushed it away. The fact that he was taken away all his property, he began to blame only the girl, and therefore even wanted to transfer her into slavery, not the Duke. But at that moment, the Duke himself saw it and understood that the man had to punish his attitude to children. As soon as the Duke released a sweet child, he wanted to offer her to go with him again. He was a young duke of which was called Azel. He is the eldest son of the Duke of Nata. although he could not often show his emotions, but then he could not keep them when he saw what they were doing with the children. Meanwhile, the director pulled out of the room and was waiting for a really difficult punishment. She was still scared, and she could not understand why everything began to happen in her life, namely worse that she could do nothing at all. As soon as he appeared there, everything was decided with the help of magic. Lisa immediately was near the girl, but she saw that she was no longer tears, though she was very scared. The men realized that she would be dangerous in that shelter, so they were asked to go with them again. Once again, he expected a positive answer. When she looked at him, she first saw his facial expression. In fact, Siena was much stronger than she could imagine, so that's what the Duke and took with him. But all the time, the girl thought that all her strength was taken away by the Lauren and was able to deceive even the Duke. Siena was a grateful child, especially because the Duke did not expel her and did everything to justify his hope. All the time, she did everything that ordered her Lorraine and even all her work. The sister asked a lot for her to write, and since their handwriting was the same, the siren wrote a lot for her. And when she coped with the tasks, she began to do hairstyles with her sister. Whatever she tried to do everything, but for the Lorraine, it was all useless. Then she realized that she had lost all the trust of the Duke and became just useless, and so her sister took all the care of her. And then she remembered that the Duke himself placed her in prison, so when she got into the past, she gradually wanted to change her future. But she knew if she did not work, then a new director would come to the shelter, and then everything would be repeated again. Or everything will be much worse. The slave owner could come, and then everything would just be awful. Siena also understood that if she went to the Knott family, then half a year he would meet with Laren, with a traitor she once loved with all her heart. But now she knew that after her death she became completely different, and now she would not be able to betray her again. She decided to go, to suffer a little, and in 15 years she would be able to join the academy. But having made such a decision, she realized that she would have to part with her teacher Liz. The woman looked at her with tears in her eyes and apologized that she could not protect her, and also quietly stressed that it was necessary to use the mind, the possibility of which the Duke himself gave her. At that moment, the Duke even suggested the teacher Liz to take the position of director in the shelter. And since the shelter was close enough to the estate, the Duke could even allow them to see them periodically. Everything happened just like it should be. They all went to the Duke's estate. The assistant director even thought that it would not be bad if the girl was good in that family. Since the girl was not good, the man even wanted to take her to put it in a carriage. It was very difficult for the teacher to take such a step, because she had never seen such a girl before. It's time to divorce, and Liz wanted to promise the little to behave well, and she would often visit her. She knew that if she would behave well, the Duke would be able to love her. Siena kept her things and was grateful to her teacher for everything she did for her. When they were all in the same carriage, she did not know how to behave properly and be grateful for taking it. At that moment, it even seemed that she did not want to behave well, as she did it all her life. Arriving at the estate, the Duke took the girl from the carriage, as during the road, she fell asleep. He wanted to bring it to a room that was already fully prepared for her. Whatever, the young man did not try to help his father, but he wanted to do his own business. Suddenly, the second younger son of the Duke, Michael, who immediately rushed to his father, appeared. He was very interested in whom his father brought, and wanted to know if she would stay with them. The brother said that the girl was older than Michael only a year and would live with them in their estate. Carefully put her on the bed, the Duke wanted her to rest off the road and also did not want anyone to worry her. The son remembered how he saw the director who treated her cruelly. He could not keep his anger at that moment. He was a little ashamed, but he still confessed to his brother. The father ordered everyone to go out, but one son could not leave her room. He constantly wanted to look at the poor girl. The girl was not quite aware of where she was at that moment, so she could not normally analyze the situation. Opening her eyes, she noticed a very familiar person near her. It turned out to be a girl who then stood nearby and began to tell something. But after a moment, the woman began to attack the lady who just stood quietly and wanted to talk about something. Laren believed that this girl wanted to take her place somehow, and it was a lot of angry, although it was all launched immediately. Fortunately, after a moment, she came to herself and realized that it was just a bad dream that did not give her rest at that moment. When a long-awaited morning, the girl immediately got out of bed and noticed her favorite housewives who were already in her room. After that, another person who wanted to show her room joined them. Now Lady was looking forward to the presentation of the interlocutor. The acquaintance continued to sway openly and believed that in this house she had the best conditions for existence, although it was not. Despite the fact that she loved to sway her achievements, the girl always remained a good person who offered the girl to play together. The moment of the girl was a little sorry that this person had a better attitude because the management always performed all her tights. She did not expect such an act from the girl, and in the beginning did not realize why the woman brought her to her room. Unfortunately, she always continued to remember what her long-known acquaintance did with her, but the woman wanted to switch her thoughts somehow. A few minutes later, she wanted to go back to her room to continue to feel normally. Unfortunately, when the girl took a couple of steps, in a second, she just fell to the floor, but found the strength to get up again and go to the destination. As soon as she opened the door to her room, she immediately felt relieved, because it was her space in which she felt comfortably. The first thing she decided to still lie down in her bed and rest a little from such a difficult day. It was not long as the girl fell asleep on her pillow. The next day, there were some changes in their team, which no one was counting on, but now other employees have worked in this house. After a while, the new man finally saw her leaders who wanted to say hello to her and discuss their cooperation. Subsequently, the maid wanted to go to the girl in the room and see how she felt, but the employee did not hear any answer even after 5 minutes. When she still did not hear the answer to her question, she decided that she had the full right to just open the door, but there was no girl there. The group immediately decided to make special searches, but unfortunately they did not give any results at all. The girl began to worry very much because she realized that this news had to be told by the Duke himself. When the workers saw the head of the manager with their own eyes, they immediately leaned their head because they were very guilty of him. Having learned such a shocking news, he wanted to understand how workers could so irresponsibly treat their main responsibilities. In no way justified to her husband, she was not going to decide that she had to just apologize for her bad deed. The manager did not know what to respond to it. Because of it, he decided to remain silent. Having realized that there was no sense from such bad workers, he decided to just go for independent searches quietly. After a while, he noticed on his way a worker who stressed that the man could simply give an order and did nothing. Then the worker stressed that he did not like the way out of the situation, because now the young man did not want to trust anyone. Hearing the words of the leader, all were very surprised, but tried not to pay attention to it. The workers were surprised when they realized that the manager would still look for a girl on their own, although they never saw it before. Hearing all these conversations, one of the employees asked for women to cease to discuss management behind his back. The man knew from what kind he came, so he was confident in his abilities for all 100%. He was not going to listen to his subordinates in any case, so he turned the other way and went to such a turn of events. The employee concluded that he and his colleagues had to just remain silent and say nothing, because it could end badly. At that moment, the young man had a very strange feeling. He did not mean to mean because it never had that. Going to one door, he began to feel that the girl could stay there quietly. Going into this room, he concluded that the woman was 100% here, but at that moment the leader thought that she fled. As soon as he saw with his own eyes some droplets of blood, he started to be nervous, so he wanted that he had reinforced. The woman always tried to obey the leader because he knew that he was a very important person, and as she suddenly heard something. It turned out to be a lady who sat in the furniture for a long time to wait for everyone to leave this place, but she did not expect a woman to be in the room. She immediately began to plead with her so that the worker did not say anything at all because the lady did not want to get into the eye of the manager. The first thing the woman wanted to find out why the lady was sitting and hiding from her husband if he was a good person. The girl decided to explain the whole situation and stressed that she did not want to see the young man with her own eyes because she knew him at all on the other side. Having looked closely at this room, she realized that this place was not properly prepared for living at all. After that, she was very upset, but was not used to being in such bad living conditions. She continued to remember her leader, but she could not understand why he did so with her. Lady knew that if the leader learned about her act, it would be very angry, because she did not know it correctly. After a second, she heard that someone started knocking on her door. After she realized that it was a man from whom had to be hidden immediately. Recalling all these events, she saw that he did not find her when she was in the closet. In real time, the girl suggested that the worker would wait a little and later to let her find a girl. The woman did not expect such an offer, because she was convinced that Lady never wanted to help her in her life. Realizing that Lady said it from her pure heart, she was convinced that there was a very good person in front of her who would always help her. After a second, she took the princess in her own hands and decided to take her to the leader who gave her this difficult task. Returning his head to the other side, he was stunned when he saw a girl who sought for so long. After learning that the girl was in the closet, he was stunned because he was very close to her, but still did not notice her. Noticing her wound on his knee, he wanted him to be handed the girl in his hands as soon as possible. The woman realized that at that moment she had to comply with her leader's request, so she decided that he had to obey him. The first thing, he made the decision to call special doctors who could provide the woman with first aid, but he wanted the doctors to do so very carefully. After the doctor finished doing his job, he suggested that the girl make his candy. She immediately refused his proposal because she was convinced that she was no longer a child, so she wanted an adult in her way. She also often remembered as workers without any desire to do their work. But now a lot has changed. The man looked in her side for a long time and was convinced that now the girl would be much easier after a doctor's visit. She, in her turn, decided to explain why she behaved so strangely, because she understood that it had to know the young man. Even workers who stood nearby became very sorry for the girl who survived such terrible things in her life. But after a few minutes, the woman noticed that she did not want to talk about it at all, because she did not want to be disappointed. Lady recalled a man in his company who had a bad influence on him and had high self-esteem. In her way, she often met various competitors that had a negative impact on it and did not allow to achieve the goals. Subsequently, the man heard that the girl began to apologize to him, but the young man did not sincerely understand why she did it if he was not guilty of it. After a while, he still decided to apologize to the girl and accept her apology, which she spoke from a pure heart. Having made contact with the girl, he decided to show her a new room for which the woman deserved completely. The girl was convinced that if Lauren came soon, she would be given an even better room, because of which she calmly accepted her husband's offer. When he wanted to leave this area, he decided to ask if she wanted to tell him something, because the girl would no longer be like this. He noticed that when he took a lady from one place, she behaved quite differently, and now the girl was much more confident. A few minutes later, a worker came up with that the girl had not eaten anything at all, so she suggested that she had something to have a snack. The captain liked this offer, and in a minute the worker had already carried breakfast of the girl to her room. The woman could not understand for a long time why this child behaved so strangely and never obeyed the advice of adults who wanted to help her. Opening the door, she reported that the breakfast was ready, but the worker did not notice the girl who had to be in this room. The worker had a suggestion that the lady went to another floor, where she enjoyed spending most of her time. After a second, the girl was surprised when she saw that the worker returned to her room so quickly. At that time, the worker clearly stressed that it was this room that was made for the staff who was in this large estate. A few minutes later, she suggested that she had a delicious food that had been waiting for her for a long time, and even cooled slightly. Feeling how much she pain was already a stomach, she made the decision to eat before such a grueling day that just started. At that moment, her thoughts were overflowing only with the food that stood in front of her, as well as a secret room where the workers lived. At the moment, she wanted to sleep again, and then the maid was frightened for the girl's condition, because she could not allow her to get over. The girl still made the decision to eat a little to restore her strength and then go to sleep quietly. Despite the fact that the girl was not very well able to follow, she had beautiful manners that the maid liked. After a little eating, the girl again began to think of the long-awaited dream for which she waited for so long, and later her eyes began to close again. The workers noticed that the girl no longer wanted to eat or forced her. She decided to at least somehow help the girl to reach her bed because she saw how difficult she was at that moment. But fortunately, everything was over. The woman did not have time to say goodbye to the girl, as she noticed that she just closed her eyes and had not heard her for a long time. When the worker wanted to leave this place, she asked for a partner who was standing nearby at least a little. Subsequently, she woke up again because the bad dreams did not leave her consciousness, and now the girl was just afraid to fall asleep. But the worker who had to watch her just fall asleep and saw nothing, the girl decided to take this moment and escape. Once in another room, the girl felt that she was in full safe, although she had never felt it before. After such bad dreams, she always remembered her past life that she did not like it very much, but the girl tried to hold herself in her hands. The woman often remembered the situation when she went down the stairs and heard how they discussed workers who did not know who she was at all. At that moment, she tried very hard to cry, because she knew what it could turn for her in the future. Then another woman tried to look good for her husband to turn her attention, but also Lady wanted to go to her holiday with her. A girl who often was near the woman always tried to keep her good relationships. When a friend invited her to go with her, she decided to give up such a proposal because she was convinced that she would not feel comfortable. Then she still decided to thank because she was sure that this person was a very important person. The girl still decided to offer at least to sleep together, and the woman decided not to give up such a wonderful offer. Unfortunately, Negative thoughts still prevailed in the girl's head, but she still tried to control them somehow, but did not always work. Subsequently, she lay down on her crib again and again made sure that it was soft. After falling asleep, the girl began to see some strange vision again. Then she was convinced that it was not a reality. The worker decided to find out the first thing to find out how the lady felt after a long night, but the girl did not expect such a question. After a while, she began to cry again, because she could not control her emotions and realized that she did not sleep again today. The girl did not go to give up, so she did not think for a long time and decided to leave this place. When she came to another room, she began to feel a little more confidently and was convinced that there was a person in this place who had a negative impact on her. When the worker noticed that the girl just sat down again, she wanted to find out if the child did not plan to do something today, but she denied such assumptions. After a while, the woman decided to raise the topic again where the girl was night, but at that moment she did not want to speak at all. Lady knew that the maid did not like it, but she always put her feelings in the first place and was convinced that they simply did not understand her. Then even with all her desire, she could not formulate her thoughts. Because of this, she decided that she would not say anything. Subsequently, the maid suggested that she go outside and personally communicate because the child sat at home. She was genuinely glad that she had the opportunity to show the girl such a beautiful territory that always surrounded them. At first, they wanted to climb to the second floor because they were convinced that there was something to look at. The girl knew nothing about this area at all, so I decided that it was necessary to listen to a maid who has worked here for a long time. Subsequently, the employee reported that the topic of the play has always changed within 3 months. Then the girl was stunned when she heard it. She tried to behave very well and told the girl with a great initiative that they usually happened in the palace. After a moment, they met a very interesting person, but then the girl did not know how to respond to it and whether she had to say hello. A young man who has taken the position of real lord since childhood did not expect to see such an interesting person who looked at him. Michael did not love the weak people very much, so he always looked at them first to understand whether they were strong. Lady was much scared and did not understand how she had to respond to it, but the worker always supported her. He was an educated person. Because of this, he did not want to shabby girls and sincerely wanted to know if they were heading to a special hall. When the worker answered his question immediately, Michael decided to let them go to this place. He also had the desire to make a tour of the girl on her own, but at that request she did not expect, so she was frightened. But the woman was convinced that it was a great suggestion, because the man was much better in this way. After a second, the woman had already left this room, and then they stayed in too, but the girl was still comfortable. Returning to her husband, she politely greeted him and tried to behave normally in the surrounding lord. At first, the man noted that he was convinced that the woman would not stay in this place for a long time, but she did not understand what he said. Subsequently, he began to notice that she did not listen to him at all. Because of this, he made the decision to raise his voice a little. After this situation, she apologized because she was convinced that she did not properly in this situation with respect to Lord. She also recalled when she worked as a regular worker. Because of this, she did not want to be bullied again. The girl tried to understand her husband, and in turn he immediately noticed it and was pleasantly impressed with such an act. Having told her personal history, she also did not forget to add what she wanted to join the higher academy where the best students studied. In this legend, Michael was not going to believe and was convinced that the girl wanted to simply swear. When the woman heard such not pleasant words in her direction, she immediately began to be nervous, and she was not pleased that her husband did not believe her. Lord was not going to argue at that time, so he suggested that he later discussed all of his personal affairs and wanted to make a tour. The girl often saw that Michael made a strange face, but she was not going to calm him somehow. Subsequently, he suggested that the girl go with him, and then she was very surprised. The man remembered that he personally promised the worker to show the girl what was happening here, so he began to make a tour. Although he was quite small, but still used to keep her promise, then the girl wanted to know why she didn't like her husband. Looking at him clearly in her eyes, the woman wanted to hear the answer to her question, but unfortunately, she did not hear her. In the beginning, he began to actively talk about the corridor who played the main part in this kingdom, but the lady was not very interesting. Subsequently, she began to notice that the man began to tell very interesting, so the girl decided to listen to him. At the moment, she noticed one very strange decoration that she was very remembered, and lady could not look at her normally because her glowing blind her eyes. Noticing that the woman stopped listening to him again, he began to pay her attention and emphasize that she would not be distracted. Michael decided to switch his attention to this decoration and wanted to tell the story of this necklace personally. This relic, as it turned out, not only was the man, but also his family, to whom this thing was always passed on to heredity from past relatives. Michael said with a rough face, because he understood that it was quite important for his future. The girl tried to listen to everything carefully, because immediately realized how important it was for a man who tried to tell more and more interesting every minute. In this story, the young man did not forget about his brother, which was an important part of this case. At the moment, she began to feel something, but did not understand why he had never had such a feeling before. The girl clearly remembered that last summer she changed the strength with a woman who had not a very good reputation. After such a terrible case, the girl lay in bed for 2 weeks and did not realize what happened to her, but fortunately everything was over. Now the girl knew 100% that with magic in no way could be shot because it could have ended very badly for her. Subsequently, the man noticed that the girl began to approach, then this jewelry, and then he wanted to find out if the woman wanted to touch her. When she began to be ashamed of a man, stressed that the woman had the opportunity to touch because she would not affect anything. But to his surprise, she immediately refused such a proposal and was sure that it was not the best time to do so. Michael was not going to persuade Michael, so he continued to keep his excursion that had something useful to bring to the girl. In moments, the picture he considered quite interesting, so Michael began to tell first. Returning his head, he noticed that the girl was constantly yawning and did not listen to him. Because of this, the young man noted the concentration of the woman. Even after such words, the woman still did not listen to him, and then the man was severely angry, so he began to shout heavily because he was not heard at all. The girl reacted calmly to it, so she decided that it was necessary to endure it, because the young man was a rather emotional person. Sitting on a chair, she wanted to find out what she did wrong, and why the man reacted so sharply when he was not listened. It was not long as it was noticed by a worker who decided to join the girl immediately and talk to her about what happened to her husband. The maid wanted to find out if the heroine was very disappointed, but as it turned out, she did not lose her smile at all. She was glad to hear and thought that the girl had to gather after such a day, but where she did not understand. Then the woman told that she got a personal telegram from her husband where he told that waiting for a girl for a rather time. She did not expect to hear such in the middle of white day, what the girl did not know exactly, but did not want to disappoint the young man. Subsequently, she still agreed to all conditions and wanted to see the leader as soon as possible. At first, the girl stressed that she wanted one to dine personally after her lessons, but the worker did not know whether the baby could be released. The woman sincerely did not understand what this reaction was related to, but in response she was not going to say something. Each time, the atmosphere in this place worsened, and the woman herself felt it every day. The leader continued to address her normally because he knew that he was faced with a very beautiful person who deserved such an attitude. To give up the offer to sit at the table, the girl was not going to be scared to approach such people with moments. After a moment, she noticed exquisite fruits in her own eyes that she never cost her life, but she was afraid to ask whether it could be made. The young man was not going to detain such a ceremony, so he asked everyone to prepare because they should already start. While they all sat at the table and enjoyed dinner, heavy rain began outside the window. Meanwhile, the man was very pleased that his father returned from the hike and all ended well. He was also pleased that the girl liked everything, but she did not give a look. When she heard that he paid attention to the fact that she even managed to touch the meat, she immediately realized that the man watched her. She was a little awkward and she began to apologize immediately, but the Duke did not want to. And he tried to emphasize that you did not need to apologize or eat something, which he didn't like it. In fact, there were times when she didn't even understand how she had to behave, because every time the master paid attention to her. He wanted to offer the girl a bell to cause a maid to prepare what she wants. When he was brought to the brief, he immediately divided them in half and gave them to the girl, though they were torn specifically for him. She simply did not believe and did not understand what he concerned with such kindness. But the butterfly tried to explain that it was when the nail greeted in the family of a new member, they shared their grenades. As soon as he suggested to taste, it was very strange for her because she never had to deal with such. Therefore, in order not to offend him, she took one highlight and began to eat, but the ants were slipped through her body as if he had not been there at all. Very soon the man raised his hand and proclaimed Siena from that moment the child of the Knot family. Now she realized that the knight and tens of thousands of people had to protect her. But the girl still dared to say that she could definitely not meet all their expectations for her. The owner did not like it, as the child was forbidden to say this in the presence of adults. The maid was very frightened and immediately began to justify that no one could hear from her. The Bogretsky immediately put the girl's side, as he understood that she was much smarter than her peers. And the woman even suggested finding a good teacher for Siena so that she was not so sad. All the suggestions were very much liked by the Duke, and he did not want to delay. Meanwhile, the younger son of the owner was not even mind so that she would start doing with him. The man emphasized that he now considered her his child and did not need to pay attention to all the gossip she could hear. Siena did not understand what the language was going, but I couldn't forget everything that happened there. After all, she knew everything in advance. The girl realized that she could not feel among them what was needed. At that moment, she realized that her heart began to shrink in her chest. She approached the tablecloth and could not say a word. And then everything was like in the fog. She just fell from her chair on the floor, scaring everyone around her. He immediately grabbed her and ordered the doctor to call. It seemed to him that everything would be fine, but had to suffer. Without understanding how, but her body was just leaning on her independently. She wanted her just to touch her, touched or even spoke. She just wanted everyone to leave her alone. The man was crying out to be brought to the doctor immediately, and she did not want him to give the appearance that he would be very worried about her. She recalled that he was just horrible in her life for her, and just didn't know what she did not suffer. She did not want to return to that life again and again and to go from the beginning. In her past, only death was the only way out, so she did not expect everything to be the same. The Duke raised 2 sons, but never happened to them. Subsequently, the doctor reported that the girl was to the edge of a difficult situation because she simply did not eat. In fact, he did not know the exact cause of her condition, so he had several versions. All the men did not know how to do it properly and whether it could be left alone, that she would come and rest. Many years passed, and even when she turned 18, she couldn't sleep normally. She took the strength to the Laren and felt guilty for cheating on everyone and therefore tried to wash away from that dirt. She was not even mine to do all the work of ordinary maids. On her shoulder there was a symbol of the fact that they had changed forces from the Lorraine, but it was like a burden. The sister was where Siena's eyes could look, as if he were just chasing her. Lauren believed that anyone could do the cleaning, but she didn't have to do it to thank the Knott family. At that time, Laren immediately suggested making an amulet as a sign of her gratitude. But it seemed that the amulet was needed to use it as an analgesic for magicians. It was the magician that could use different elements and fool everyone around. Many people believed so much the elements that they could even turn into demonic demons. Therefore, it seemed that using magic was the risk of becoming a monster, and the amulet was an important means of protection. It seemed that the problem was that she did not know much about the production of amulets, and therefore decided to follow clear instructions. Since the girl spent several days, she was sure that she had to get out. A little later, the maid asked to get up in the room before the Duke Assel's arrival. Siena recalled that when she gave the amulet to the Duke, he was not very interested in him, but hoped that he would still benefit. But she decided not to hammer her head with little things and focus all the attention on cleaning. Suddenly, she found exactly what she did for him and therefore realized that there would be no benefit. It was very difficult for her to keep her emotions because she didn't know how to behave now. At that moment, she approached her on cleaning and emphasized that they still had a bunch of work, so it was necessary to accelerate a little. She staggered her maid amulet, eyes filled with tears and around everything in the fog. When she met Michael, he always considered her pathetic, who took her work from all cleaners. And with an angry expression, he ordered to disappear immediately from his eyes. The young man always tried to offend her as soon as he could. He even liked to do it, because this activity was pleased. Siena was not very pleased to hear all this, as she just wanted to be just useful for everyone. So she again closed her head and began to apologize, though he did not think that there was her fault. Suddenly she opened her eyes and realized that it was just a dream. Her body was covered with sweat. Again, before her eyes, she was the same maid, the same room, nothing changed around. It seemed to her that she would never feel comfortable there, so she decided to leave that room. Michael still did not understand why the girl was still in their estate. The doctor and the maid tried to explain that the lady had a fever, so she slept to move to another room. The young man was very angry and began to shout at the servant, as well understood that they all only suffered that they were very good to Siena. At that moment, the girl barely opened her eyes and wanted to intercede for her maid. He knew well that Siena was a good girl and tried to cover everyone and protect him and his father. But he did not know that she was not so good to cover everyone who treated her badly. But she immediately stopped and realized that it was better to remain silent so as not to meet the same end again. It seemed to her that such treatment was definitely not suitable for her status, so it was a direct road to hell. Although Michael ordered to prepare the best room, she believed that she was already in. He tried to assure that she was no longer in the shelter, which means it was the Knot family. Then she even remembered the terrible ritual with a grenade at the table. The young man even stressed that not everyone could even get that grenades, but the girl just wanted to behave exactly as if nothing had happened, as if she could just get that pomegranate from her stomach. The woman was convinced that Siena had to get used to everything later, but did not think that she would consider everyone her family. Then she politely asked him to leave the girl's room because she had to rest. As soon as he learned that the sister became ill and got into the room of servants, he immediately went there. In fact, he realized that he had burst into a girl who was not already dressed, and it was really not decent on his part. The doctor also apologized to her and wanted to leave her room. The girl believed that he was the most normal, because the past in general pretended not to see her. Because no matter how the Duke's order, the doctor would not start looking at it at all, since she is an orphan. Suddenly the woman turned her head and noticed again that the girl was getting bad again. Last doctor was released because he was unable to diagnose, and then rumors spread that the lady could not be called. So she decided to bring a little to her immediately, namely a light soup. They decided that Lady Boar's devotion had deepened Siena as she ate everything she brought her. After that, they immediately began to offer various sweets and try to feed it better. The girl could not get used to this attitude because no one ever fed her from the spoon and did not care. After breakfast, the nanny reported that it was necessary to rise, to dress, because there was a bunch of various important cases. They came to the room where she was waiting for a seamstress to choose different dresses for her. But Siena seemed that when she looked like it merged with the Duke's family, everyone was just jealous. For some reason it seemed to her that the Duke was a little angry when she spoiled her dinner in her honor. When the seamstress saw the girl, she could not love her. The eyes of green simply struck her. They also rejoiced in her pale skin, as they had to come with bright colors. Although the girl was indifferent to the girl, but the women chose everything and chose those dresses as if for themselves. But then they noticed that she had a very sad face and a school-shaped school uniform. She still wore old clothes, and all who looked at her then realized that the baby was out of shelter. Unlike her, her older sister is very well in the role and always chose bright outfits. Recently, a bunch of strange things began to happen in general, but Siena tried not to pay attention to them. As soon as she turned her head, she saw a young man who kept a large bouquet of flowers. He was so great that even the maid wanted to help keep him, and suddenly they noticed that there was a small note among the flowers. The girl realized that it was from a young prince who really took care and worried about her, and also wished for a faster recovery. But it seemed to her that it would be better for the money she spent on flowers just gave her. She wanted to join the military academy, and so she would definitely need her money. Now it was clear to her that the younger brother thought that Syria was ready to marry his brother, and that's why she was treated. She considered herself very naive, but did not understand that Michael made her think about her. At that time, Syria decided it was a Lorraine, as it was she who stole all her strength and tried to manipulate everyone around. Therefore, being quite small, the girl decided that something had to come up with so that the deception did not repeat again and again. She gathered with her forces and gave her greetings to the Assel, as well as thanked the flowers, but since there were a lot of them, she decided to share with others. It seemed to her if Michael sees that she got a bouquet from his brother, then again something will not understand correctly. But it was definitely impossible to abandon Assel's bouquet. The girl remembered that when they received gifts at the shelter, they were sure to share with everyone around. The whole servant was very grateful to the little lady, and where anyone even wanted to dry flowers and use as a bookmark in books. For herself, the girl left only a postcard and only one flower. It was enough for her. And then they took the fit again, as the time went, and the chosen dress was still gone. They had different clothes for each season. When she looked at all the outfits, she couldn't even imagine how much everything was very expensive. But as soon as they decided, the nanny was very pleased with the choice and decided that it was in such an outfit that it was possible to start training. But the seamstress emphasized the dating catalog for the nanny, perhaps, and also wants to choose something. Still, she did not have joy. She thought that he would rather hate her, because she thought that he could not expect a good attitude. As soon as the women coped, they immediately calculated how many things they chose for a little lady and whether it was enough. Siena could not believe the amount she saw for all her outfits. It was just incredible as expensive. When they saw that in fact the check from the owner was empty, they could not believe it. The woman could fit any amount there. Wearing a new dress, she looked like a little princess. Everyone just couldn't love her. She did not like bright colors and a sophisticated style, so when she looked at herself in the mirror, it didn't like it very much. So she immediately thought that he would once be able to sell it and get a lot of money. She increasingly wanted to think about a combat outfit for battle, as on the battlefield no one would think about the appearance. Going to the room, she immediately saw Michael and got a little comforted, as she was in a new image. It seemed to her that much had to say a boy, but she could not pick up the appropriate words. He was a little strange that she looked at him so like a cat, but could not say anything. But suddenly their conversation was immediately interrupted by a teacher who was in a hurry to the lesson. The man was a little confused when he saw them, but the guy immediately warned that he was just a company. The teacher immediately introduced himself and wanted him to be called Ruel. Before the lesson, he wanted to ask a few questions, so he asked to write everything she knew. Siena was able to write well, but if you immediately show that the child from the shelter writes well, everyone could have suspicions. In her new life, she was a little excited by the appearance of MCL, but realized that it was necessary to concentrate attention and start writing well. Suddenly she realized that she really could not write in that new body. Since he helped, he decided that both of them did not cope well for the first time. The teacher was surprised that the girl was able to write, but what she wrote was not clear. Meanwhile, the assistant all over the estate was searched by young lord, and when he saw in the hall for training, he calmed down a bit. Now it was clear to everyone that it was Michael not to come to his lesson, but he did not want the girl to think that he did it for her. The guy teacher began to take him to his class, and so that he did not interfere with Siena. But when he went to himself, he ordered the man not to teach all kinds of nonsense a girl until he was absent. The teacher who stood in front of her looked quite pleasant, and it seemed to her that he did not treat her well. She immediately remembered him, and even without letting her say the words began to blame her immediately and offend. When they remained alone, he could no longer hide his true face and entered the role of a strict teacher. He immediately threw away everything she wrote and continued to call her an orphan and a wandering. But at that moment, she decided that she would definitely not listen to all these images again and again. The man tried to tell everything about the Duke that he was also an orphan, so he took care of such as she. Now she did not stay and started talking, and then of course it did not like it to the teacher what he heard. He pounced on her and wanted to exfoliate her, but she hoped that as soon as he hit her he would be released immediately. And at that moment the door opened to the hall and stood in front of them with their assistants, who were shocked. Grabbing the girl by her hand, the woman wanted to convey her point of view and clearly tell her that she did at that moment. After a second, some people who wanted to talk to the child came to them, but no one expected the events to start so unfolding. The woman continued to shout to approach her because she was very worried about her life. As soon as the bad people began to approach her, she immediately began to rush on them and beat them with her strong hands. After that, the worker wanted to find out whether the lady was in the order after what had just happened to her. Pressing her body, she wanted the woman to continue to defend her because at that moment she was a very close person for her. Sometimes Lady continued to return towards the bad person and did not want to start approaching her again and demanding something from her. Looking at her husband, she always saw in his eyes a cold look that very much did not like the girl, but she suffered it all. She did not like it when she was driven into a dead end, so the girl always tried to express her opinion no matter what. Going to the leader, she pulled him by the sleeve and wanted to say something to him, but he did not count on it at all. Looking at him, she wanted to hear the answer to her question, but unfortunately, the man did not know what to say to the girl. She believed that he was just a child who could not answer a clear question, but the manager did not like it. When a third party joined them, she immediately noted that there was no fault in this situation and did not understand why they were arguing. After a second, they noticed another character who wanted to help resolve this conflict and was sure that the young man knew the way out. Subsequently, the character simply fell on his knees and began to defend the girl, because he knew that she had her personal parents, so wanted to protect her as best as possible. But the second partner completely defended the leader because he was convinced that he played a more important role in this house, so he was on his side. The girl did not know whom to listen to. Him realized that at that moment she found herself between two lights, which each of them was getting stronger on her. The manager continued to stand on his feet confidently and was convinced that after a while the girl just wanted to get away from him and no longer ask such uncomfortable questions. Lady decided that she just would not say anything, but after a while she noticed that workers wanted to hear at least a word from her. Then the man concluded that the baby was just scared, and now he could not say anything, but later his mist changed. Looking at the child, he realized that he could not blame her of some bad deeds because he understood that she was it all. After a second, his worker ran to her, who began to hug her, and the man realized that the girl had at least some protection. From this situation, she decided to draw some conclusions that will change her future life forever, as well as living in this building. Also, the girl realized that if she was very worried about such little things, she would be very much regretted in the future and will not be able to get out of this place. The worker could not believe how a man made such a bad act towards the girl, but she had no desire to interfere with this conflict. The woman immediately decided to turn to the girl and ask if she had not hit because she seemed to have happened to the lady. All the girl immediately denied it and decided to ask how the ceremony was going through what she soon had to see in her life. Because of this, they began to worry very much because they understood that they had never had this in life. The employee realized that if the girl really wanted to find out about this information, then she had to ask the manager but did not want to do it very much. They did not have time to agree on their affairs as another character came into the room who began to jump high with joy. The workers did not like it very much, and she noticed that the man did not think at all from the side. He immediately began to apologize, but as the information he wanted very much to talk about. In the beginning, he still decided to go to the girls normally. So he went out the door and knocked again and wondered if he could go. Putting his hands on the table, the man reported that he had heard the whole conversation with which the girls had only spoke. After that, he began to talk about the teacher who played an important role in the girl's life and was the number one person on which she was so level. When he did not hear the answer to his specific question, the man began to get nervous and began to ask again and too. These all the words that the man said the girl was that at the beginning of the boy, it was all handed over to his father who asked to tell it to all the girls. After a while, she realized that she needed to study with the boy together and she didn't like it very much, but she didn't have a choice now. The boy, on the contrary, liked these news very much, but the girl did not dare to express his opinion, which he would not like very much. Now she could not believe that she had to study with a person every day she did not want to see with her own eyes. When he noticed that the girl looked at him with a very strange look, he immediately noticed that she would normally perceive it and did not look at him more. The young man was convinced that she simply did not want to worry him, but he knew that this issue had long been resolved, so did not understand why she was worried. Lowering his eyes, he continued to speak in her part some words, but the girl tried not to listen to him because she knew what a man was. Also, a few minutes later, the man reported that the father would be much better looking for someone for the girl, but now she had to study with him. When Lady suggested a decision from this situation, he immediately denied that the woman did not understand anything at all. She was indifferent to her who thought about her, and even more so, the young man who did not understand why he came to this place. After a while, after analyzing his behavior, he apologized to the girl that he was too sharp, but she was not going to be offended. Getting out of the sofa, he was very glad that his plan was now slowly realized, but the girl did not understand what was related to such a reaction. After a while, a set came to them, which was the best teacher in this place, and he had to teach a girl and husband. She did not know how to respond to it, but she was very pleased that she would now have a good teacher who could teach her something. Going closer, the teacher thanked the girl very much for her good deed, and only then she remembered that it was a person who came to pick up Michael. At the moment she was frightened, because the girl knew that she could not read at all and was very bad to write, so she did not know how to gain knowledge. The teacher thought about it well, and wanted to come up with a plan to help the girl learn how to write and read normally. At the moment, the man sat down closer to her and reported that she would behave normally as usual and did not make a very good person. After a while, she thanked the teacher for taking care of her, and then she did not like it to the young lord. Now she was very glad that she would teach such a beautiful and good person, and there was a confidence in the lady that she would be able to enter the academy. With happiness, the man just started to shine. Now he has a real good student who could listen to him for a long time, as well as helping something. The first thing he wanted to draw a lesson about magic and began to talk about it with a great initiative and a smile on his face. The teacher was able to talk about magic well because it was his favorite topic, as well as one of the most important to enter the academy. The man, this long ago he knew, and he was not very fun to sit there and listen to all this several times. As soon as the girl began to write all very quickly that her husband told her, he immediately noted that she made many mistakes. Despite this, he continued to tell the subject, but by the moment she asked for a man not so loud to her. A few minutes later, he reported that the topic they had just passed on the girl and the man, and then none of them expected to hear that. After leaning her head, she simply continued to do everything that she always understood that she could better prepare for the exams. Subsequently, he asked them to record everything that the man told them, and then they would turn their notebook and show that they had already there. After the young man heard, quickly rose to his feet and reported that they did not have time to do so much task in such a short time. After the lesson, he decided to approach and ask how the first day of study was given to the girl, because he understood that at the beginning there could be some difficulties. Looking at him, she immediately noted that she was going on the plan and she did not see any difficulties. He was surprised to hear that because usually the teacher heard a lot of strange questions to his address, but this day became an exception for him. When she came to her room, she quickly opened the desired notebook and began to study all the material that her husband gave to her and did her homework. Then she began to recall her first magic, which she studied independently, and was very pleased when she mastered this skill. With great inspiration, Lady continued her studies because she saw progress, and realized that in the future it plays an important role for her. People who played in that area realized how cold was cold that day because each of them trembled very much. Subsequently, another bird flew to the man that brought him positive news that was written on the letter, and it raised the mood of the whole team. He did not gather anything to tell his classmates, because he understood that at that moment it was not necessary to do it, but after reading he was satisfied. Lowering his eyes, the like-minded person reported that they had soon had to return to another palace because they were needed there. The man continued to turn to his great master because he wanted him to become much warmer, but at that moment no one could help him. Returning his head and his side, the man noted that now everyone was in such conditions. Because of this, he had to suffer it. The team continued to go down the stairs quietly and realized that soon they had to go to a new place. The man wanted to analyze the girl's homework, and as soon as he opened the leaf, he noticed that her handwriting became much better. Now the man was convinced that if he compared his abilities with the girl, he was not as smart at all as close. The worker thought that Lady tried very hard to improve her position and improve her knowledge. The girl did not think about people who were near, and did not know where they had such a strange thought about her. After that, the woman wanted to talk to her husband personally, to ask how he was going on, learning that recently started. She had no desire to listen to their conversations. Because of this, she took her manuscript again in her hand and began to continue to study. Seeing this leaf, she realized that the girl became smarter every second and was increasingly different from her peers. Lady, in her turn, thought that she was not surprised, but simply listened to her teacher, who gave good advice. They did not have time to agree on their affairs as a leader who was very pleased to see their subordinate students who had gained knowledge. The man immediately took his clothes and emphasized that only after the 3rd year of his studies did the manager begin to come so often. He had no desire to answer all these questions, so he quickly began to undress to get into the house and communicate with someone. As soon as the manager wanted to leave this place, then the worker informed him that the lady spent a lot of time in his studies, and it was very pleased with the man. Subsequently, he realized that he did not think about the girl at all, but just started to go to the side of the room, and it was very unclear for him. He often mentioned the situation when he struck one man with all his power, and after a while he realized that he began to simply lose control of himself. The worker decided to approach the manager and ask how he felt himself, but the man did not want to talk to him at all, and even more so to answer his questions. Then the young man continued to tell that when the leader was not in place for a long time, he wrote to him many letters in which he told how the lady felt. After he heard, he decided to pay attention to him and talk about this situation because it was very interested in it. After such a story, he caught fire with the desire to communicate with the girl and personally know how she was trained. Their dialogue did not stop at all, and with every second they began to talk more and more about the girl and their daily affairs. In the meantime, the worker tried to do her work and corrected the windows with which moments were very dirty, so she tried to fix it. After a second, she paid attention to some man who was a very strange person, and then the woman was a little scared. When the worker noticed in this room, she immediately wanted to find out what he had done here, because he had never seen him here before. She later guessed that he just wanted to find a girl. Then the worker informed with great pleasure that the lady was on the street. The man did not expect to hear such an answer, so he realized that he just needed to wait for the girl herself to approach him. Considering her room carefully, he began to feel that the girl had been here before, because everything had her energy for him. The young man often remembered the girl's past that was not quite good, but he tried to help her every time when she had difficulties. At the moment, he began to feel that his heart seemed to break into 2 parts, but because it did not understand it. When the worker noticed that the man lifted the flower from the floor, she began to apologize immediately because she realized that because of her, there was such a mess. After a while, he made the decision to leave the area, but asked the woman in no way told the girl that he was here. But he did not have time to go far as the man began to run up to him quickly and emphasized that the leader necessarily waited for him. When the girl returned, she did not quite understand what was happening here because the worker now behaved in a different way. Lord Michael decided to join ordinary people and reported that he had recently been a new message from the Count. The first thing he came closer to the girl and decided to personally tell her this story about this letter. With the surprised face of the lady, it all started listening and could not believe in the beginning that it was a real life. History told about two not very good women who played an important role in the future. Now the guy was convinced that his father had a really good reputation that few people told him as a child. In the beginning, the girl could still not fully believe in all these stories, but the stories of the man were truly convincing. Subsequently, he began to tell another story about one very interesting leader who wanted to marry one woman for a very long time. At that moment, the worker completely listened to and also tried to do his job, namely pouring tea for the manager. He was convinced that he had a great guilt in this because he had to tell his father all about it in the beginning to consult with him. In the meantime, the girl tried to stand on her socks to get one very important book that at that time she needed very much. After a few attempts, she realized that she was too small to reach the shelf on which her favorite book was lying. Now she realized that she had a new goal of which had to achieve the necessary knowledge as soon as possible. Having collected all her strength, she decided to put a chair and quickly climb on it to reach her as soon as possible. Unfortunately, in a second, she fell from a chair and hammered her leg strongly, but fortunately she managed to take this book. The first thing, she immediately began to rotate her head in different directions, because she knew that her book was now on the floor. Silence began to prevail near her, which very much pressed her head because of it. She wanted to find a way out of this situation. When it came a little time, she found the material she needs and quickly sat down at the table to study it as soon as possible. It was very difficult for the girl to learn because she wanted to eat and therefore realized that she had to restore her strength. She constantly forgot to eat in time, so she decided that it was necessary to go down to the floor below to find something in the kitchen as soon as possible. When she came to one door, she was sure that today she could eat normally because she knew that she was in the room. She did not have time to fulfill everything she wanted as she noticed a man who stood at the door and looked at her clearly at her. The man was not going to stand at the door for a long time, so he decided to approach the girl as soon as possible and talk to her personally. The first thing he wanted to know what the girl did here, but she said with a big smile that she very much wanted to restore her hand because she did not eat for a long time. After a second, she lowered her eyes when the man told that in this house it was easy to get lost because even experienced people sometimes disappeared. When Lady worked here earlier, she often saw how a man helped other workers who came to places from whom could not get out. The man thought that the chief maid had to prepare for the exquisite guests who had soon had to visit them. After a while, he wanted to ask the girl a few questions that she answered them, but the woman would be lost and did not know what to answer. After that, the young man realized that he made a big mistake and suggested that the girl climb up again and discuss all the events there. She still did not like the moment that the man was sometimes talking to her very cold, so she did not know whether he had to obey him. Then Lady asked that the man did not speak in any case the bad words towards the maid, because she was not guilty at all in this situation. The young man agreed to the girl's suggestion, but suggested that they go to her room together and discuss more there. At that time, she began to emphasize that she was very scared, but the man did not realize sincerely with such a reaction if he was nearby. They did not have time to agree on their own, as their conversation was interrupted by a worker who wanted to communicate with the head of this institution. He politely reported that he had been looking for a girl for a long time, but the man asked that he had spoken in his own way because they discussed his affairs. Then he asked personally from the worker that he had a girl in her room because she was ashamed of her husband for some reason. He immediately began to fulfill his task because he knew that he had to do everything that the manager wanted. The young man also wanted to know clearly who left the girl alone without people, because this man had to be punished. After leaning over the manager, the man immediately took into account it. After a second, he turned around and began to fulfill his first task, but now the girl knew exactly who the young man really was. And the hero himself considered himself a very kind person because he always did everything that his workers wanted, but he expressed his own opinion with moments. Then a new person came to their palace who was very pleased to welcome the leader and his whole team so politely before them. The girl knew that looking at the fact that she did not warn at all, that she would come with very well, and each of the staff was glad to see such a person. A woman who was nearby with a young child was delighted with how she behaved in such a high-ranking environment with leaders. The man realized that the people who stood before them were very high self-esteem, but he did not dare to tell them in the face. Now the young man had to perform all his duties, which he gave to his guests, so he first decided to spend a woman. Michael, who was a girl of the girl too, decided not to leave one that was an example from her father, who was high manners. The girl at the moment began to worry about what would happen further, but the man tried to reassure her in her own words. Recalling the events, he long mentioned their conversation with his brother who set his son to such an event. Grasping him by his shoulder, he wanted to clearly emphasize that he had to be in the future, that the boy was ready for any schedule of events. The girl also tried to look good that day, so she put on her beautiful dress that suited her for such a holiday. At first, Michael wanted to find out why she came so early, because he thought that the girl would always be a little late before the visit. The woman who was next to them wondered that it happened before her at the time with the Duke standing nearby. He decided to introduce everyone together, and the girl, in turn, tried to politely answer all the questions and also greeted. The woman immediately began to behave very correctly because she wanted to humiliate the little girl who stood near her. After leaning her head, Lady began to guess that probably the guests who came to them were aware of people and knew that she had no parents. Michael tried his best to protect the girl, who at that moment in his eyes changed dramatically and was no longer so cheerful. Yesterday they were a difficult day for them because they were preparing for a visit to such people for a very long time, but they did not show themselves from a very good side. The woman laughed loudly and thanked the Duke for inviting them to his palace, and she felt quite confidently. The man continued to look at it all calmly because he was an educated person who was able to behave in such situations. The girl who sat near her native person said nothing and simply watched the other members of this institution. Before they began to discuss serious affairs, the man noted that his father would help him, and they have already made a long time ago. The young man sat down to the girl closer, and Michael reported that the taste was quite soft, so he thought that the girl had to like it. Brother, looking at his young man, noticed how well he treated the girls and performed his duties as a real man. Previously, the girl could not swallow food normally, as well as eat it in general, but now she has changed very much and grew up. The girl was very similar to her mother, so she did not behave very well and paid attention to the lady who liked Michael. She clearly reported that she was very strong and envied because she saw how much she got just from such a distinguished family. The woman thought that no one had received as much support as a girl from the executives of this institution. She then clearly stressed that she would always thank these people who saved her lives and treated as a native person. All these words she reported with a big smile on her face and did not like it very much to the people who surrounded her. The girl with a big smile looked at it and did not understand why the lady still felt so positively without looking at anything. On that day, she did not pay attention to her at all and also realized that the girl was in fact not as a person as always put herself. After a while, the girl who recently came to them for dinner suggested that Lady go with her to take one place. Then everyone paid attention to her, because they realized that the girl made a very bad act and even a native person made her remark. The girl thought that Lady had very good abilities and also heard a lot of stories and wanted to understand whether it was true or not. The woman did not know how to respond properly, but understood that it was her opportunity to show that she was really capable of. She recalled the events when she was shown a very strange book, and then wanted to find out if the heroine realized that it was written. Recalling those events, she remembered her past, as well as her former surroundings that was very bad at that moment. Michael always helped her with her studies even when he was not very aware of the material, but still defended and supported the girl. Lady was very surprised when she heard that she could return to her former life, but Michael tried to support her. Despite all the problems, she was easily related to it, and then Michael grabbed her by her shoulders and wanted to understand why she was always so joyful. He began to convince her that his family would simply not be released because she was now a real member of their family forever. The hero continued to convey his opinion, because he thought that he could somehow get into the girl, but unfortunately, she did not listen to him at all and had her own opinion. Finally, he said that she was no longer the girl who had previously been possible now was possible to remove the spell. Lady remembered all these events and did not know that now to answer her husband because she thought that her life could have changed very much. A second later, the teacher reported that he also put a special spell on the guests who did not want to see in this house. The girl remembered her past and realized that the spell was a very important substance that greatly influenced the person. Now she wanted to play on the side of her teacher because he thought he was a strong magician who could change people. In another room, Isabel began to behave strangely, and her mother began to worry for her a little because her daughter had never held herself. As the girl turned out to be very worried because Michael paid a lot of attention to another lady, and it did not fit her very much. Then the mother began to wave her hands and noted that she would do everything that was in her forces because she had some influence on the Duke. When her baby began to think in her thoughts that she loses the girl, her mother did not like it and she changed sharply in behavior. She decided to support her somehow, so she pressed her and began to emphasize that her child was much better than some orphan. The man continued to sit in his place and asked the worker whether they had already finished cooking in one magical substance. Subsequently, the leader began to feel very badly because his head seemed to split into smaller parts, because of which he began to think with what could have been connected. He knew that his plans could be moved at any time because life was not as bright as he thought at the beginning. The man wanted to discuss with the worker that he thought about one girl, but his opinion did not dare to express his opinion because the first impression was not very good. With the help of his thoughts, he began to reassure himself because it was understood that it was not important for the man to calm down a little over time. When the young man still dared to express his opinion, then he emphasized that a lot of different rumors went about the girl, but no one knew whether they were true. The man was convinced that some problems could disturb the girl, and so far, he wanted the leader to help her somehow. After making his hands, the manager wanted to really find a way out to somehow help his relative, but he still didn't have a clear plan. After a second, the door opened his brother, who began to shout very loudly and ask for help, but the man did not understand what was the case. And then a girl came to them with her husband, who spent her, because at that moment, she wanted to talk about a very important topic. All the people who were in front of her began to approach her to find out what was the case, and then the leader was very scared. The girl reported that she wanted to go to one place, but none of the audience supported her in this decision, as if he realized that it was dangerous. The man knew that the place that the girl very much wanted to get was very dangerous for her life, as well as for everyone who was in this house. But the woman began to emphasize that the leader had previously told her stories about how people quietly got to that place and felt normally. The young man did not remember at all that he had once told the girl, and then realized that it was most likely to do his partners. Now he did not know how to properly persuade the girl to go to her room and leave these thoughts. The teacher decided to discuss these events with Michael, who stood nearby, but he was not on the side of the teacher at all, who offered one idea. When he heard that a man began to say some incompatible things, he decided to step on his foot specifically to discuss personally with other persons. Lowering her eyes, the girl still decided to listen to the men because they were smart people who knew what they were saying. Lady continued to remember the past events of life, but realized that her husband was a good person who still wanted to help her sincerely. He later realized what was wrong, so he decided to listen to her advice and support the girl at this moment. When Lady got the long-awaited permission that she could go to one place, now her smile from her face has not fallen for a long time. On her way, she noticed one worker who was very surprised to see the lady at the door of the manager. When she realized that she had to restore her strength and eat, a woman not very much wanted to do it because she was not hungry. Using the moment, she quickly opened the door and decided to flee because she did not want to explain the worker's whole situation. When she managed to go to a safe distance, the girl began to think how long she could hide from the worker. It was very mentally difficult to stay in this area, and many who understood it except the leader and some people. After a second on her way, she again saw a girl to whom she did not treat very well from the very beginning of their acquaintance. Nesting closer to her, the stranger began to emphasize that the woman who was a very ignorant person before her. In the past life, a woman has never acted with the lady, but now the girl realized that she was already another person. Nest closer to her, she emphasized that she was now the main house and would pay more attention. All these words did not scare the lady, but the girl did not stop there and continued to intimidate the heroine as soon as she was able. She tried to just agree with all the words that the girl told her and still thought that she was right. Hearing such words in her side now, the beauty did not know how to respond to it, because her criticism did not affect the girl at all. They looked at each other and were ready to continue the conversation. In an instant, a fan fell from the girl's hands and Sao immediately rushed to lift it because the thing was very expensive. She was ready to support her acquaintance, but asked to take her place to do the business. When Michael visited Siena, he did not understand why she was not ready, because everyone knew about the news that took place in the estate. Meanwhile, the Duke returned, and everyone had to greet him joyfully. The young man tried to explain that he should now be called dinner, and his father wanted to receive guests on his own. Suddenly she began to cough very much, and her brother thought she could have a cold. He quickly leaned her hand to her forehead to understand if she had no fever. And then I realized that she did not want to go, as many were not very good. It seemed that the young man really understood Siena, and also wanted to get rid of those two women, as he was also not pleasant. But he hoped that everything had to go into place, because their father returned and could solve all the issues. Again she remained in her room and decided that he still had to gather, though there was no desire. The next day she was still lying in bed, but did not understand why no one awakened her. It was the day of trials for Hezros that day. But since she did not have the servants, the girl decided that he had to gather herself, and did it until no one noticed that she was sleeping again in the nanny room. At that moment, she realized that the door of the room did not open and someone locked it intentionally. She recalled that when she was 12, she happened many times, but had to go out to follow her plan. Siena decided to lie down a little. Time will come and someone will be able to unlock her. Suddenly, Deborah ran into her room and was shocked that the girl was not yet ready. The woman was stunned that she had not even tried to give up for help, but just lay down and fell asleep. The girl tried to explain that no one could help her and continued to continue the conversation at all. The servant immediately noticed that she would not speak, but the young lady just ignored her. As soon as everyone gathered at the reception, Michael looked Siena and did not understand why she didn't go for so long. When they still appeared, they started to gossip around immediately, because it was impossible to be late for such a technique. The nanny immediately fell to her knees and apologized, and also believed that only she was guilty of everything. And also in late the little lady they wanted to blame the guest, and all the views fell only on her. The lady immediately began to rebel, and did not think that everyone in the Duke's family could not be so hospitable. The woman tried to explain to the Duke there was a rather unpleasant incident between them while he was absent, and also reported that little lady was forced to be hungry. The expression of his face changed a lot because he could not count on such. But his son confirmed him and even added that the girl was kept secret because she did not want problems. The woman began to justify herself immediately and believed that they had nothing to do with them. She could not believe that everyone immediately stood on her side and agreed with her history. And then the Duke heard that on the day of his reception, the girl was generally closed in the room. Therefore, after the nanny told everything, she wanted to admit that it was her fault. The girl realized that it was one of those women, but did not understand why she did so. And then the man learned that one of the servants would even get for it. Then he is at All Hollands. Now he realized that one of his officials had come to a conversation with the Countess, and it was very interesting for him. The Countess began to apologize and wanted to explain that her fault was not exactly. But it had to be postponed for a while as it was necessary to start the ceremony. Since the test was a ritual that could not be cancelled, so the priest offered to hold a ceremony first. And the young man thought if it was a test, then the traitor was to be revealed and punished. Then they heard that the accusations and punishment of their side should be in terrible torment. The father agreed with his son and decided to proceed to the ritual, but believed that Isabel did not own Charos that day. Then their family would definitely not bear responsibility for it. The Countess was very frightened, so she asked for Isabel to stand the test. It was necessary to prove that the Duke did not understand them a little. If the girl shows that she is slightly higher than Siena, then everything could be decided by herself. The girl understood that her rivals were definitely ready for everything for her daughter. Therefore, she had such a feeling that was her day of death that day, so she did not want to pass the trial. But the priest decided to show the objects that have chosen their owners themselves for millennia. The possession of Hezros meant that it could be an honor to become a defender of all mankind. Both girls reported that they were ready to start the trial, and the first was invited by Lady Isabel. All men from the Knot family tried to watch the girls quietly and in the soul. Of course they cheered for their lady. As soon as she touched, she was thrown back and her test was completed. The mother quickly ran to the girl and wanted to try again because she did not even touch the water. But there was only one attempt, but the girl could not even take away from that place. But precious things did not allow the Isabel to touch them and to throw it aside each time. Now they both realized that the Duke could not forgive them for doing what they did. The next was the second girl. She was a little nervous and could not hardly pull her hand forward. As soon as they put both hands, everyone around the present realized that it was exactly not like last time. They knew that since nothing was happening, it was normal. The Duke just couldn't believe it. The workers who were nearly asked how the girl heard it, but she did not expect that someone was near her. Returning her head, she noticed two men, but at first thought that it just seemed to her. The brothers who were sitting nearby were always talking and discussing a girl on all sides who only saw her, but she did not like it very much. Returning her head, she looked at them for a long time, but realized that she had to concentrate on her magic now. After a while, her hands began as if the wards in a little ache, but she did not pay attention to it. The girl was very angry with the magic that stood next to her, but could not help her in this situation. In a few seconds, the lady decided that she would take the situation under her control and start making magical spells, and then the workers were just shocked. The woman began to feel her body gaining strong energy, and now she was convinced that she could make something wonderful in this world. The brothers who were sitting nearby and watched all this began to shout to the girl to stop doing so, because she was risked by her health. At that moment, she never heard at all because she could have continued to control the fire that was near her. When the lady began to approach this campfire, she felt that she was not influenced by her at all because the heroine was not afraid of fire. The girl could not understand until the end of what was happening, so she decided to ask the manager, but at that time there was no nearby. Then Lady was caught by the desire to make a special treaty between the two parties that could weaken the situation that prevailed that day. But unfortunately, no one was about to help her because it turned out to be the brothers wanted to cope with her problems. The lights that she had fired her body every time, but she couldn't understand why she needed it. Now the girl decided that she did not want to be someone's worker because she had her own opinion and wanted to keep her. The fire continued to chase her, but after a while she managed to control it so that it only had a positive effect on it. The workers who came to the manager to tell him all the information could not clearly say whether they saw the girl because they were not sure of it. Then she simply continued to rest in bed because she knew that she had to restore her hand after hard work. The manager tried to sit near the girl to control the whole situation. At that moment, he was most worried about her condition. The younger brother recalled how they criticized the girl an hour ago, and now she was completely different. He was also convinced that Lady was sometimes deceived because she was a real magician that was completely capable of it. His older brother knew that such power magic could have influenced it, so he did not want to express anything. Looking out the window, he thought that soon the girl would behave differently and was sure that she was a good person despite anything. Watching the woman, they wanted to know when she would definitely wake up because they noticed that the heroine did not serve any movements for a long time. After a while, the man began to suspect something very strange, but he did not want to express his opinion in this way. Subsequently, the worker reported that they had to go to the conversation room because they had to discuss very important details of some events. The topic for the conversation was about a family who recently came to the house, and then the manager realized that something was very scary. For a long time, he decided to go to another room quickly to discuss it with his workers and know what to do next. As soon as he left the girl's room, she immediately opened her eyes, but Michael saw that she was not sleeping all this time. After a while, he noticed that the aristocrats who were in their home began to speak very loudly, and no one could just sleep normally. Before leaving the girl, he wanted to talk to her personally, but she did not expect such a conversation because the fire appeared near her again. The woman was convinced that because of her husband, she lost her head completely because now she could not think and analyze the situation. She recalled that period when she couldn't do anything because other persons asked to conclude a special contract with her. From these thoughts, her head began to ache, and she did not know how to formulate her thoughts and direct them in the right direction. After a while, the girl clearly stressed that she could not be as a worker now, but she was ready to help people with something. The fire continued to burn near her face, and now it seemed to her that this bright light was right in front of her eyes and she couldn't get rid of it. After a while, the girl wanted to find out if she could have broken the contract with her husband, because now she was not ready to do it. Now her dreams have become that it was impossible to realize in any case, and from these thoughts the decisions became only worse. She realized that her personality has changed very much after she began to use magic that was negative and the moments of positive. At the same time, she remembered how a woman with her daughter apologized to the manager for her bad behavior. Then they worshipped him and wanted to ask why the events were so bad for them and what they did. The woman began to say that she did bad things, so she was convinced that she had to bear some punishment for her. He continued to watch her for a long time and wanted to think about what punishment was needed for a girl for such bad behavior. After a while, they were already on their knees and wanted to hear what the leader would tell them, but he continued to think.